Welcome to A Meaningful Marketplace.
I'm Sarah Masoni from Oregon State University's Food Innovation Center, where I've helped countless dreamers launch their new food products. It's the science of taking a food delight from the kitchen to mass manufacturing and still keeping its great taste. That's what I do. I've been called the woman with the $1 million palate, although I haven't tried to cash that check yet. Listen in weekly for real-life stories.
I'm Sarah Marshall, owner of Marshall's Haute Sauce and author of Preservation Pantry, modern canning from root to top and stem to core. I love inspiring business owners to get started on their journey, encourage folks to be part of their local community, and I'm excited to help business owners tell their stories. Hello and welcome to the Meaningful Marketplace. We are here weekly to discuss the journeys of food entrepreneurs. We are glad you've joined us today as we bring you stories of hope and inspiration. This is Sarah Marshall, owner of Marshall's Haute Sauce.
And Sarah Masoni of Oregon State University's Food Innovation Center. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Masoni. How are you doing this week?
It's so nice to be in person.
I know. We're back at the FIC, and I love it when we're in person. It's kind of my new favorite thing. I like to take the show on the road. I bring my big bag of gear and set up in this big conference room, and it feels great.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
I dig it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the things that I've been doing this week.
I know, and plus I saw you out with a bunch of female food entrepreneur founders or something.
I've been doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
You've been busy.
Yeah, so there
Makes me feel kind of boring.
There's a group called Cherry Bomb. And they do all kinds of things. They have a magazine. It's all women in food. They also have some podcasts, women in food podcasts. And they're talking about maybe bringing one of the conferences here to Portland.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I met with some other women founders to be like, hey, yeah, you should bring this thing here. And so we're just trying to get together to say, we do rad stuff here and you should come here and do it. So that's what that was.
That's great.
So we're hoping for that. And
Let me know if you need help.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're just, right now we're trying to just show them there's all these great people doing great things in food.
Definitely.
And there are. So the next conference for them is the Jubilee in April. So we're, as a group, all going to try to go there. And
where's it at?
It's in New York.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm going to head out there and have a stand, hopefully. I applied. I haven't heard if I got in. We're going to cross our fingers. We're going to put out in the world that I'm going to be there. So hopefully we'll see. The other thing that I was at this weekend was the Truffle Festival. So you may notice in here, I brought truffles for our guests to take home.
Did?
I did. I was at the Truffle Festival in Astoria, so I traded hot sauce for foraged truffles.
Wow.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I know. Yeah. So I was at that. There's lots of events going on for the whole month of February, so people can check out Truffle Fest. And then tomorrow, you and I are both going to be at
the Blue Ocean Cluster.
Yeah, we're going from the forest to the sea. So we're celebrating the sea, and I'm going to be talking about my hot sauce that I make with the dulse seaweed and sampling that to people.
Yep, the chefs from the Food Innovation Center will have a few interesting snacks for people to try. So if you're going to be there, or if you were there, I hope you'd enjoyed them.
Yes,
this is going to be past.
Yeah, future past, but they're gonna do it again next year, so
next
people
year,
can find out
ahead.
about it.
Yeah.
So, and that's called the Seafair Symposium.
Yeah.
So we'll be at that together.
We're trying to work on creating foods using the whole fish. So the skin, the bones, everything should be something that we consume or use in our life. More sustainability.
Yeah, we dig that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. And if people are interested in more of that, we'll tag it in the show notes so they can find it and hook up with the Winter Waters people. Well, we have been partnering with the Regional Food Business Center to bring guests from the 6-state region, and we're currently meeting with business owners from the great state of Oregon. And I would like to welcome Danita Macy from Oregon State University. Thank you for introducing us to all these wonderful new friends. Danita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Bonjour, my name is Danita Macy, and I am Anishinaabe Ojibwe descendant, Basque and Welsh. I have the privilege to work with all these amazing people. We work in food preservation and supporting our community. I just love everybody else hearing these amazing stories.
We love having you, and we love hearing them as well.
Yeah.
It's been so great, and it's been some of my favorite shows so far. So I just really appreciate you bringing all these great people into our lives. Do you have any events that you want to tell us about or anything going on currently?
Well, so a lot of my events are not public,
Okay.
but I am happy to share some of the things that I'm working on with my awesome guest here, who will be introducing herself in a minute. Her and Jenny Brixey, who worked at NAYA and now is the Native American Alaskan Native Liaison, for Multnomah County Health Department. They're doing a sunchoke pickling class tomorrow, which is great. I just got back today from working with the Chemawa Indian School on campus at OSU, doing food preservation, and just working with them on different foods. We're working on food preservation and getting people certified in our community that pretty much already know all that stuff, but sometimes people like to see those certifications. And so learning about all of that and getting into the garden, and I'm always humbled by the amount of wisdom that these young, amazing little souls have. And so I love listening to them talk and share and teach. And so any of the stuff that I do, it's because they invite me to join also. So I appreciate them a lot.
Awesome. We always love that you inspire others and all of your food preservation sharing. So thanks for doing that with people. We would like to encourage you to connect with your state by signing up for the Regional Food Business Center newsletter. It's a breeze to sign up. Just go to Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center.com, hit connect with us, and choose the button to receive newsletters. We want to thank our sponsor for supporting Meaningful Marketplace. Thank you for helping us spread the word about small business owners and entrepreneurs. Let's hear a word from our sponsor. The Northwest and Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center is the proud sponsor of the Meaningful Marketplace podcast, giving a voice to food from across the 6-state region of Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, and Wyoming. The Food Business Center supports Northwest and Rocky Mountain food industry makers as part of the USDA's National Network of Food Business Centers, supporting a more resilient, diverse, and competitive food system as a go-to source for small and mid-tier food and farm businesses with a focus on underserved communities, providing education in the form of technical knowledge, business programs, and industry news. We sponsor trade shows, meetups, and conferences to connect growers, producers, retailers, distributors, and processors, all to stimulate business and raise the standards of our storied food industry. Join us as we travel through the 6-state region, learning more about food makers, food hubs, and food systems. Visit the website at Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Businesses.com to get connected. And Danita, would you like to bring on our guest?
Well, yes, I would. This is my good friend, Lucy Suppah, and we have worked together for a long time. And I will let her introduce herself and then just share who you are and what you do. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you. Nich Patray and Minaimuma Koltuima Wanishash, Lucy Racehorse Suppah, Wishnishai Malchia, Kosasoni, Kobunakwetanen, Wishnishai, Waikanashpam, Ko Umchi Wanakni, Ko Agadekanoa, Ko Panakwat Navira Mogoni. Good afternoon. My name is Lucy Suppah. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs and also half Shoshone-Bannock in the Western Society. That is what they call us. Traditionally, I am Waikanashpam, which is the salmon people of the Columbia River, more specifically the Umchiwinukni, which is the Big River Band of the Columbia River. And also on my mother's side, I am Agadekanoa, which is the salmon eaters of the Salmon River. And I am also a fierce Bannock woman and, very proud of my identity and my lineage of where I come from. I am currently the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Coordinator at the Native American Youth and Family Center.
Awesome. We're so glad that you're here today, and we can't wait to hear about the program that you run. So my very first question is, because I hear people say it all different ways. So sometimes people say the NAYA community garden, and sometimes people say NAYA. What do we say?
Yeah, it's more so NAYA. I think NAYA is definitely kind of a romanticization of an acronym that is really just an acronym. And our garden is called Wapas Nanishaku, which means holding the basket. And that was gifted to us from a Wasco elder, who's actually the second oldest elder in the Wasco tribe, named Ken, more so known as Tookish Man. That's just kind of a nickname that he has, that he carries, and we're super blessed for his generosity in gifting us that name.
Amazing. Will you tell us where the garden is?
It's located on Northeast Columbia Boulevard, kind of near the airport. Traditionally, it was called Nochokiku, which was a Chinook trading village, and that's a big mission of ours, is to kind of reconnect with the roots of the space and the land. It is my belief, and this is definitely more of a personal belief, of that we never owned the land. We belong to the land, and we're the original stewards of this area. And a big mission of ours is to kind of try to return that space to what it was. It is our belief that healing the land is healing ourselves, and in a lot of ways, personally, again, this is totally my own opinion, but healing is justice for a lot of us. There's, a lot that our people have been through, and we also live a reciprocal way of living. We believe everything is pretty relational. Having that ability to heal that land is, like I said, healing ourselves.
That's very nice. Thank you for telling us.
When she said fierce, she meant it. So, Lucy, some of the things that I'm always amazed by is when you go to the garden and you see where it started and you see where it's at. I'm amazed by that. So do you want to share a little bit about how it started?
Yeah. First and foremost, I just really want to give a huge shout out to Mick Rose, Bonds Weichman, Jenny Brixey, and Monique Lopez, who were the original visionaries of this space and had this dream of, originally, if you visit the space, it was originally 4 baseball fields. And it was, what you would see on a baseball field, just grass and dirt and very compact. And it was being leased out to a little league. And it was kind of ironic to us that, we have all this space and there's a huge lack of accessibility to healthy organic foods for the Native and Indigenous communities in the urban area. And that's due to a lot of different reasons. I think it's really important to mention that, a lot of people who are here that are urban natives are here due to relocation, termination, and their disconnect from their original homelands was not a choice that they made. It was more so thrust upon them. And so they seen this space and seen the potential for a beautiful garden space that would be good for food medicine. And I think that's really worth mentioning that, we don't see plant and food medicine as an alternative medicine. It was our first medicine. And having that ability to reconnect with that medicine was a big part of our healing. And so the vision started around 2018. There was a proposal to put in 2 beds, and then the pandemic hit. And it became a little bit more urgent and also a good outlet for people to get outside and stay in community. We are a highly communal people, and having the ability to be outside, to put our hands in the dirt, to create something that was not only practical and useful, but also enjoyable. And so kind of bringing that light back to our community, to share space and to grow beautiful, nutritious food, an act of food justice. It was an act of reconnection with culture. And so I started from 2 beds in a baseball field. And if you see the space now, it's grown into 2 of the baseball fields that were there. And we have further expansion dreams and efforts, but of course it takes a lot of collaboration. NAYA is a huge organization, and there's a lot of dreamers that are dreaming of projects that sometimes, don't always run in parallel. So a lot of collaboration and negotiation that's happening currently, but we do have big plans for our expansion. And I could talk more about where we're at currently. Like I said, I wasn't one of the original people. I've been with the garden since around 2022. I started as a volunteer. I've held a couple of different capacities with NAYA. But I've been in the garden full-time since November 2023. So just over about a year and a half, I've been with the garden full-time in a paid capacity. Last year, we produced around 4,000 pounds of food.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it was, yeah, we're super proud, and we could not do it without our volunteers. This garden started as a dream in 2018, and we did not have full paid staff until 2023. And so it was truly, we have to give that the props and the shout outs to our volunteers, because we truly could not do it without them. And that's true to this day as well. We have a lot of dedicated people who, find fulfillment outside of monetary value. Currently with the space, we have a medicine garden that is not all native plants, but they all serve a purpose. And that is something that we've been working on. The way that we talk about our plant relatives, like I said, it's a relational mindset and intention that we go about it. There's a lot of dislocated and displaced plant relatives that most people would call invasive that all have a purpose. And again, just like ourselves, came here without consent. And so we provide classes. We have a Eat Your Weeds workshop that we do every spring, where we find the benefits and uses of those plants to utilize them and to not just abruptly take them out, which a lot of times will aggravate them. And just really thinking about how we can be in better relationship with those relatives as well. So our medicine garden has native and non-native relatives, and some of that is due to sustainability and climate change. Through the pandemic, there was a high need for bare root, with everybody getting sick and wanting immune support. And so something that we planted to be an alternative to utilizing bare root, because it is not sustainable, it is a highly exploited plant relative. We utilize elecampane as an alternative to that. And so just trying to be strategic and mindful and, again, intentional with how we're going about providing this medicine. And a big part of that is education. Like I said, it's truly a privilege to be able to have the ability to create that access to not just the plants themselves, but to education and to give some guidance on how to reintroduce these plant medicine back into our lifestyles. We also have our First Foods medicine. And I think it's really worth mentioning that NAYA itself serves over 380 tribes within the Portland Metro alone. And I think, we're often generalized in that we are similar in a lot of ways, but also we are a highly diverse people. And the mindset and the belief systems that vary from tribe to tribe really is worth acknowledging. And so our First Foods garden is not just Pacific Northwest First Foods, but also from throughout Turtle Island. We have a Three Sisters garden, which is corn, beans, and squash. And big shout out to Jenny. Her tribe provided the corn that we grew last year, and it's called Tanchi Hoyo. And it's a flour corn, and it was our first year growing it, and we were really nervous because it can grow up to 20 feet. It didn't get that tall last year, thank goodness, because we were pretty intimidated. It got to around 14 feet, which was still pretty tall. And we got a really big harvest. I can't remember the exact amount, but we're going to be doing some programming here at the beginning of March in collaboration with our culture night at NAYA, where community will have the opportunity to process it with us. And we plan to make some tortillas and then to also have a Choctaw soup dish with it. Tanchi Labono is what it's called. And just like you guys were talking about the salmon, our intent is really to eliminate waste as much as we can. And that's just something that has been in our culture since time immemorial. I think a lot of people forget by objectifying our plant relatives rather than seeing them as a relative. We forget that, this is a being giving its life for us. And a big part of this process is also acknowledging that mourning and respecting that being's life that is given for our sustenance. And so it's highly important for us that we utilize every part of the plant. And so like the stalks, after we harvested, went directly into our compost and are eventually going to be put back into the ground. The husks of the corn, there's a tradition of making corn husk dolls that the kids will have an opportunity to make corn husk dolls. the community is going to help with processing it into flour. And prior to the tanchi, we grew Hopi blue corn, and that went throughout community for over a year. So it's created a lot of food and learning opportunities for our community that we're super, like I said, grateful and blessed to have that opportunity. So that's our Three Sisters garden. We also have traditional tobacco that's grown in our First Foods garden. We have a commercial tobacco prevention coordinator, Ben Sanford, who's done a wonderful job of, again, repairing that relationship that we have with that plant medicine. Its name, its presence has been pretty tarnished and exploited by the commercial tobacco system. This plant is highly ceremonial, and I'm going to leave it at that. It is also something that we'd like to protect. And not every tribe utilizes that medicine, and acknowledging that, some of these ceremonial plants are for certain people. He does a really great job of educating community and repairing that relationship with that plant relative. And we also have our native hedgerow, which is kind of where more of my first foods are at. We have our tumch, which is our choke cherries, our walkamu, which is our camas. We have some kaush, which has been a very experimental process thus far with the kaush. We've tried various methods, and it's not happy just yet. So we have some further work to do with that one. We have rose hips. There's a cedar right at the beginning of our hedgerow. We have elderberries. Gosh, there's so many different thimbleberries, salmon berries, a variety of currants that are in that native hedgerow. We have our wiwanu, which is our huckleberry, and we have plans in our expansion to create a traditional root meadow as well, which would include our luksh, our kaush, our wakalmu probably more will stay in the trench that we have because it needs a little bit more moisture. But yampa, our sawik, and so a variety of different roots that were traditionally gathered. And it's really important to mention that, these cultivation efforts don't only create access in the urban area, but it's really important due to climate change and urban sprawl and encroachment of these urban areas on our traditional ceded territories. The seasons are getting shorter and shorter. They're getting more unpredictable. And there's an urgency there to learn how to cultivate these foods in means of survival. It's about more than just leisure or recreational ways of doing this. It's about survival. Again, I can't stress enough how much of a privilege it is. And it's really ironic to me in a lot of senses that, Native people and Indigenous people are often looked at to fix a lot of these problems that we did not create. And when I say it's a privilege, I think people really need to understand that these traumas, these atrocities that happen upon our people aren't that far away. My dad is a boarding school survivor. He also is a relocation survivor. His first language was our language, and he no longer can speak that. And so I really take it serious and am grateful to have the opportunity to learn my language, to interact with our first foods, a privilege that, my dad didn't have. And so I take what I do. I'm really passionate, and I can't say enough of how grateful I am to have a capacity to invest in my culture and identity.
I think, we can hear your dedication in everything that you say and do. So I just want to thank you for everything that you're giving to your community. It's really seen and heard. And I know that that's why Danita wanted to have you here today, because everything that you're doing is so wonderful. So thank you. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk more about where you get the seeds to plant in the garden. So we'll be right back.
Oregon State University's College of Agricultural Sciences and the Food Innovation Center are proud sponsors of Meaningful Marketplace. With a mission to serve all Oregonians, we are committed to giving voice to those whose food and agricultural stories are not always heard. By providing access and opportunity for a more diverse and just food system, because food brings people together. Okay, we're back. Can you tell us a little bit about how you have put all the seeds in place and where those are collected from so that you could start this beautiful land gardening program that you have?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a gradual process of sourcing the seeds that we utilize. Originally, it started with just, BIPOC owned places, sourcing from places that were BIPOC owned and that were reasonable in price. PSEF, I have to mention them because they're the reason why I have my job currently. The Portland Clean Energy Fund awarded NAYA a huge grant and is the reason why Bonds Weichman, who is the Indigenous Garden Coordinator, and myself have the ability to be in the capacity that we have. Once we got that funding, it was really focused on Indigenous and Native-owned seed producers that we were sourcing from. And just within last year, we got into a seed exchange program with the Choctaw Nation. It's a really beautiful story, and I wish Jenny Brixey was here to tell it for herself, but she reached out to her tribe, and they actually have this endangered basket bean that they're having a lot of trouble due to climate change and the shift in patterns of weather growing in their homelands where it came from. And so they gave us, I think, about 12 or 14 beans to grow. And one of the elders, made sure to put it in our heads that, you shouldn't put all your beans in one basket. And so we grew about 12 of the beans in our garden, in our first foods garden. And then Jenny took some and grew some on her balcony of her home. And it thrived. It's a huge success story for us, and it really loved it here in the Pacific Northwest. We ended up with around 4 pounds of beans from the 14 seeds that we were given. So we had the ability to send a bunch back to the Choctaw Nation. And from what I hear is that their next move is to send, now that they're getting a good amount of beans collected, they're going to send them out into their own communities now. There's less of fear, a scarcity mindset of we don't have enough to send to our community to see, to experiment. But being a part of that was truly awesome.
That's so cool. You saved the beans.
Yeah.
I feel like that was so much pressure to be they only gave us this small amount and what if we mess it up, But you guys didn't. You did it. You saved them. That's so cool.
Highly rewarding.
I love that.
The same with the corn. It came directly from the Choctaw Nation. And also the Hopi blue corn that we grew previously had come from a Hopi family, and they have a really interesting tradition in their ways of being. And it's not my story to share, but they do have familial lines of seeds. And so they're very protective of their seeds. And, corn, it can cross-pollinate. And so it's very important that you do keep them separate. Yeah, so seeds have been very interesting, and I'm doing a couple of different things within my tribe, with their permission, of course, and I think that's something, consent, I always say it, it's highly important that you get consent from wherever you're getting seed from, and not just with people, but also the seeds itself. I think understanding that they will communicate with you and you can try as much as you want. And if that being doesn't want to be there, you need to understand that and to be open to those, what most people would call failures, but I like more so to call lessons. And gardening itself is all experimental. And, you could do the same thing every year and it can go great for 5 years and then the 6th year it don't work. Mm-hmm. And so being open and adaptable to what those plant beings want and need, I think is really instrumental in making your garden successful.
I think that's a good lesson for everybody. I have that happen often with the plants in my home.
I have squash bugs in my garden.
Yes, we had issues with that.
So bad this summer. This last summer, it was really bad.
Yeah, we lost 7 plants to them.
Yeah,
it was a tough one.
And sometimes you just have to be I guess that's just what was meant to happen.
I was out there trying to pick the eggs off the bottom of the leaves, and then finally I just went.
Yep. Maybe next year will be better. Yeah.
It'll be worse. I think it's going to be worse.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
so I might it goes back to adaptability.
Yeah,
like
I might
you're
not
saying
plant
you have to do things on the plant schedule.
Yeah.
Because you can try all kinds of things, and when you don't allow the plants to do what they actually want to do, you inhibit them, and you'll get it later. because they won't grow for you,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and I think also acknowledging the biology and the interconnectedness of everything, kind of understanding, like, the pollinators, the insects, they also are part of this life, and acknowledging that, those squash bugs, they might have really needed it that year.
Yeah.
And, we all have our role in this life, and I think, we get really in that hierarchical mindset of that, well, I needed it more, but did we really? So I don't know. That's just kind of how I think of things. So
That's good.
I agree with that. One of the things that we talk about a lot is when we go to gather, it's not a harvest and take and take. And why is that, Lucy?
yeah, I mean, because it affects everything else. I mean, the nettle is a perfect example in the sense that if you overharvest nettle, you don't just affect the nettle itself, you don't just affect yourself or your community, but also those pollinators. There's a specific butterfly that is dormant on the nettle stalk. And if you take too much of the nettle, you take away their habitat, you take away their house, their home. There was a hard lesson learned here locally where they did go extinct in our area because of that overharvesting. And so just really being considerate of your effect on everything around you, not just between you and the plant. Again, that interconnectedness is something I have to stress really, really hard because it's so true. We affect everything around us.
I was thinking if Jenny was here, she would go on and on about nettle. And I was thinking about something that you said earlier. And I always think of nettle also because when I was little growing up, my grandparents lived on the Sandy River and there was nettle everywhere. And then there was a flood and we moved back to the Portland area about 10 years ago. And when we moved back, the places where we gathered nettle were gone. And when we went and asked, where's the nettle, the response was, oh, we got rid of that. We burned that. And so when we talk about the importance of Indigenous knowledge, we need nettle, the tortoiseshell butterfly, right? They need it. So what would you suggest as far as when we're talking about sharing knowledge with people, what would you say when you see nettle?
I think seeing nettle in its entirety, I know the name itself, stinging nettle, is oftentimes taken in a negative connotation, but also those trichomes, which are the stinging part of the nettle, also have really good health benefits to them as well. You think about acupuncture, those trichomes stimulate a similar response. They help alleviate arthritic pain, inflammation, nerve pathway reawakening as well. If you're having issues with your nerves, that sting can be highly beneficial to reawakening those pathways. Yeah, it has so many uses, and I think, again, this consumption mindset that we have in this society is highly detrimental to the sustainability of not just our planet, not just our plant relatives, but ourselves. And I think in my introduction, I said "Inmi Naimuma," and in a Western way, they would translate it as relatives. But personally, within my family, the way it was taught to me is that we are one, all made by the same maker, and are here to share everything that's created equally. And the way that translates to me personally is it's a sustaining of life in all forms. The water, the plants, the land, our animal relatives, our human relatives. In Ninaimuma, we're all relatives, and we can all use our skills and our different ways of being to support and sustain life in all forms.
Thank you. One of the things I was thinking about when you were talking goes back to so much of the stuff that we learn from our grandparents and our aunties and such. So at NAYA, I know that there's a lot of work that's done with our elders. Can you share a little bit of the work that you do in the garden or some things at NAYA?
Yeah. So as I had mentioned, we did around 4,000 pounds of food last year, and the distribution efforts have, again, been highly intentional. We collaborated with the Cully's Farmers Market and created, during our harvest season, which was from around June to October, around there, we did 10 food food boxes each week that went to the Cully's Farmers Market, and they were free for BIPOC community and folks. They could just go. We would make a post of what would be available, and they could just go and pick it up. We also did 5 additional boxes for our elders, which Larry helped distribute in a lot of senses, who is our elder advocate. And we also did a U-Pick. We do an annual U-Pick where community can come out. And that's one thing I really want to mention, too, is that all of our food is free for BIPOC community. And that is for equity reasons and acknowledging that, there's a lot of our BIPOC relatives who have been oppressed on land and have put in a lot of work to feed the Turtle Island and currently do a lot of that work to feed Turtle Island. And we expect for non-BIPOC folks to come out and put in a little sweat equity and an expectation to help fulfill that equity, to make sure that, it's not falling back on our BIPOC relatives again, and it has, as far as how it always has and continues to be. And yeah, all of our food's free for BIPOC folks. Non-BIPOC folks can harvest, but they must put in their sweat equity in order to have that ability to harvest as well. The U-Pick is probably one of our most popular events in the garden for our elders, and it's been really beautiful not just to provide that food for our elders, but also to have those conversations. And I think a lot of times that is a social hour for them. And, we learn so much too. Recipes and story sharing, which is really big in our culture. Oral history is huge for us. We didn't originally start writing out our history the way that a lot of other cultures have. And that was to keep that relation going with our relatives. Those stories, not writing them down, made us talk to each other, made us collaborate, made us work together, and to understand that we all have value and a role in our communities. So that story sharing is always really fun. We also contribute to our cafeteria. Many Nations Academy is in NAYA. And we have a wonderful head cook, Jana Garcia. She does an amazing job of incorporating our produce into the everyday meals for the students, for the teachers, for the staff at NAYA, for the elders. The elders have various events throughout the week, and they come and have their meals at NAYA. And Jana does a really great job of incorporating our produce to make sure that they're able to try it out. That's another thing that's like a big role of my job, is to host these classes and workshops to help our people reconnect and understand how they can incorporate our produce into their meals as well. Our market garden, which is the part of our garden that you would see regular vegetables in a grocery store. And we have a huge variety of different vegetables that we grow in that market garden, from eggplant to okra, a variety of lettuces, kale, collard greens, Asian greens, pak choi, a huge variety. And it's not always familiar to our community. So providing these workshops and classes and recipes to allow them to kind of experiment and find new ways of cooking the foods and what works for them is really a big part of my role as well. And then we also collaborate with our youth camps. There's a spring break camp that is put on by our learning center with NAYA, and we provide different activities from propagating to painting Indigenous designs on our stock tanks to harvesting with the kids so that they can have a hands-on experience within the garden as well. I forgot to mention that we do have a children's area, too, within our garden that the kids tend themselves and are able to harvest themselves. Chakamonkey Lush and Tunasan are the different early childhood programs. They'll have different parent groups out there as well. They have a sensory playground out there that is all natural materials that was in partnership with the Future Generations Collaborative to help children, not be in that disconnect of tablets or on their cell phones or watching a TV, but to, have the ability to use their imagination and to create new pathways for their brains to find that imagination and to branch out from, like I said, that disconnect of a tablet or a cell phone. Those are some of the ways that we distribute, but I'm sure there was more, but that's what I can think of right now.
I think it's so necessary to get kids too, out in there digging in the dirt with their hands and connected to the earth. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, which is always my least favorite part of the show. But we do love to ask how our listeners can support anything that you need, what they can do, how they connect with you.
Yeah, I would say we do have volunteer days throughout the year. They're generally Mondays and Saturdays from 10 to 1. Currently, we are only offering Mondays until the mid of March, and there is a process you need to go through prior to coming out to the garden. Due to the fact that we share the area with the school, you need to email volunteer@nayapdx.org to get clearance, and then you can come out regularly as a regular volunteer. Also support, Native-owned businesses, Native nonprofits, Native organizations. Stand with us to uphold our treaties, which has yet to happen. Acknowledge the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. Support Native data sovereignty. There's a lot of missing data out there for our relatives. Support Native and Indigenous representation. Scholarships for Native and Indigenous youths would be great. The requirement to have this Western education is a big reason that we do not see that representation in higher levels of capacities. So, those are just a few ways. But and connect with your Native communities that are around you. Know who was here and was original stewards prior to colonization.
Great. Thank you. Those are all good advice and good things for people to do and look into. Do the research. She's given you some great paths to follow. You're a wonderful guest and you're doing wonderful things. Thank you for doing all the great stuff in Portland that you're doing. We appreciate you so much. Danita, thank you for bringing Lucy into our lives. So we appreciate it. Sarah,
Thank you.
thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Danita.
Thank you for listening to The Meaningful Marketplace. Before you go, show some love for our podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. Follow us on Instagram at Meaningful Marketplace. You can call or text Sarah and I with questions at 503-395-8858. We couldn't do this without our fantastic team at Joy of Creation Production House. Thanks to Dave, our production coordinator, and Haley, our audio engineer. We'll be back next week, everybody. Bye.
Bye for now.